Okay, good evening, everyone. I was waiting for my co-host, Letitia, but I think she might have gotten caught up somewhere. So I think we should probably get started. I know there's only four of us, but we are also recording this so that we can send it out to everyone on the mailing list. Yeah, so I want to welcome you to tonight's meeting. Thank you so much for joining us. We're really excited to hear what Mariaan has to share with us. So just a quick or a brief introduction to Mariaan. She is a BIS Multimedia graduate from 2015. She's also got her honors in multimedia, and she's been working as a front-end web developer since then. She's also gone on to start her own company called Orinqo. I think that's how you pronounce it. And that's also involved with front-end web development, where she runs and manages all those projects, which is really impressive, and I'd love to hear more about that. So yeah, it's very much my area of my sphere of understanding. So I'm really excited to hear what she has to share. And she's also in the process of starting her master's degree, which is also very cool and exciting. So Mariaan, thank you so much for joining us tonight. I'm really looking forward to what you have to say. So please go for it.
Oh, thank you so much for the introduction, Annie. That was quite intensive, so no pressure from my side. Okay, so I'm just going to share my screen. Just let me know if it shows up.
Yep, we can see it.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so everyone, like Anika introduced, I'm Mariaan, and I'm really excited to be talking tonight. And thank you, Grace Schools, and specifically Annie for arranging this. So my talk tonight is going to start kind of explaining my journey as a developer and why I started a tech company. And I also want to share some tips and insights to hopefully help current students and women working in tech. So just a brief background, I think it's probably maybe a duplicate from Anique's, but I currently work at a company called Orinqo, so you definitely pronounced that correctly, which is a company I founded about 3 years ago. And the company specializes in front-end development and creating software as services. So my role varies between managing the company, my team, and also developing different types of web and mobile applications and reading accounting books at night. So next. Okay, so I started my BIS Multimedia degree at the University of Pretoria in 2011. So I wanted to study something within the computing industry, because I figured I spent most of my time in front of the computer anyway. So my interest was also sparked through my childhood of playing games on those early TV game consoles. You know, the ones with the cards where you have to swap out for the games. And then later on playing like 8-bit games on Windows 2000 and going to LANs with my friends at high school. So I think I was very fortunate to have had access to technology from such a young age. So when I found the multimedia degree at Tux, I thought it was the best degree for me and a perfect fit. It is composed of computer science and programming and art and animation, 3D, HCI, sound and video. So everything that interested me. So I was actually amazed online. I was able to find one of the early console images, and I couldn't believe my tech career kicked off for only $1.99. Which was pretty awesome. All right, so I completed my studies eventually. I was an undergraduate in 2015, which I thought this picture sums up perfectly. So there's a few different ways of interpreting this image, so I'll definitely leave that up to discussions afterwards. All right, so after I graduated, I started as a junior front-end developer for a very corporate company. At the time, the terms front-end and back-end weren't really used. It was more, you work on the UI part since you studied multimedia and you know art, supposedly. So, which I think back then wasn't really a bad thing, since I grew to love front-end and design. But perhaps knowing all the different types of directions one could go into tech would have been very beneficial. And I'll share some insight into this at the end of the talk. So I started development with Java for UI, which is something I definitely not recommend. JavaScript, Angular, and then Android for mobile. So during this time, the company offered me a bursary to continue my studies part-time. And the multimedia department at that time at the University of Pretoria also just included VR as one of their modules in their honors program. So I was really excited to continue my studies and specialize more in multimedia. So I would definitely recommend taking these types of opportunities when they arise, like for instance, the bursary. I figured I plan on working for the company for a while, so I might as well continue to study part-time. And on that note, something that I was kind of shy of during my studies, but later on embraced, was that we couldn't actually afford to continue my 2 years of undergraduate studies. So I took a student loan, which I eventually paid back after few years of working. So if that is a concern to any of you to continue studies, I hope my story kind of inspires you to take the loan, or just to show it can be done and that it's still a great investment. So after I eventually completed my honors studies as well, I worked for the company then for just over 3 years, and I kind of worked up to a position of the front-end team lead. So I was team lead for around like 8 months at the end of kind of duration of working for that company. So I was asked by a few friends of mine to join the companies that they were working for. And I figured, I have too many unanswered questions. And I think a big consideration was also the fact that all of those companies were mostly in Sandton. I had this big yearning of understanding, like, where does my paycheck comes from? How does the world work? And who actually decides what type of software and apps get built? So I learned a lot from being the team lead around that time. And then I just decided to start my own company. I didn't have too much responsibility as well at that time. So I wanted to work in a less corporate environment, and I wanted the possibility to create my own projects and opportunities. So I couldn't afford to just quit my job and start a business. So the first challenge was to actually land my first client. So luckily I read a few business books that explained that very well. Don't just quit. Find your first client and then you can quit. And I perhaps make it sound very easy, but it happened pretty fast. And looking back, I had no idea how I managed to actually get the courage to do it. There was also not any friends or mentors I could ask for help to starting a business. But as time kind of went on, I realized what was the key factors that contributed to this bold choice, which is what I'll discuss now with a few tips. So I created a list of 5 things you should know that I wish someone told me. And I particularly picked this title because I thought it would make excellent clickbait if you were to promote this. It's a typical YouTube kind of thumbnail that you would not believe. Anyway, so in all seriousness, when I reflected back on my journey as starting as a programmer and then creating a company, these are the things that really helped me. So some things were very accidental, which I didn't thought much of at the time, but I hope this will be useful to you too. So the first one is win a friend or two. So during my studies, I didn't differentiate myself at first as being a woman studying technology. It only really became apparent when one of my girlfriends dropped out and she didn't think she had it in her to complete the programming part of the degree. And more of my friends followed, particularly my girlfriends. So by the time I was late second year, it wasn't unusual for me to be the only girl in class. I think this issue inadvertently gives the impression that information technology degrees aren't typically for women. And I found it's kind of a domino effect. Seeing more girls in class kind of inspires more girls to sign up for the degree just by showing up. So luckily, with the promotion of women in technology and talks like these arranged by me, I see more girls willing to sign up and gaining confidence that they can complete the degree too. So I think as a result, typically being the only girl in class, it actually worked towards my advantage. So this is where the winner friend comes in. It forced me to make friends with guys and different groups that I wouldn't have done outside of my studies. This also had a great contribution to gaining confidence in starting a company. In the end, you as a woman are going to have to work with both women and men. So starting to make friends and collaborating with as many people as possible from university days is going to keep you, is going to give you a great head start when it comes to communication and teamwork within your career. So keep your identity as a woman, but start feeling comfortable to voice your opinion and make conversation within a group of men. So as homework, you must at least have a few guys as friends at university. So most of the time when I speak the language that my clients does, interestingly, all those barriers of gender and race fall away. It's only a matter of competence and confidence. It's definitely something you have to work at all the time, especially in proving your competence as a woman. But that can too be an advantage since you always have the element of surprise. So the second one is to find a female mentor or deeper inspiration. So again, when I started working, it was similar than with my studies. I was one of 2 women in a team of 7 men, which was, to be honest, really intimidating, especially as a junior just coming into a company. But luckily, my woman colleague in the team was a bit older and already experienced. So I learned a lot from her, and she definitely was not afraid to speak up in meetings. So this taught me the importance of mentorship and also having great role models. So it goes back to inspiring more girls in class by just kind of being there, being a part of something and showing that it is accessible. So something I found very motivational was to learn from women leaders outside of the tech industry. So women that has also started their own companies or trying to inspire other women through different types of media. So interestingly, going back to my multimedia studies and my gaming hobby, as I thought back about games as an early media, borrowing ideas from other media like films and books and cartoons and music. So similarly, there isn't much women in tech leaders currently. So I try to do the same when I want to learn or need some mentoring, even if it's just online or through films or biographies, and it kind of keeps the motivation high. So just interestingly, some of my female role models include Anna Winter, which is the previous editor of Vogue, and she's also the Met Gala creative director and organizer, and Magda Butzika, which is the richest woman in South Africa, and I think probably should be one of the biggest inspirations for most women. And she's also the owner of Signia. And then, interestingly, like actresses like Amy Fuller and Jessica Chastain, just for the types of female leading roles that they choose to play in films. So you'll probably know Amy Fuller from Parks and Recreation and Jessica Chastain from Interstellar or Zero Dark 30. They always play very inspiring female leading roles. And these women inspired me to continue to kind of aim high and keep going. The power of stories. So the third one is to have an holistic view. So particularly this is for not getting stuck in a problem. Always try to see the bigger picture, or like Stephen Covey puts it, start with the end in mind. So coming back to when I studied, where a lot of girls kind of dropped out because of the difficulty of programming, what personally helped me a lot is to understand that working in tech doesn't necessarily require programming. And it wasn't clear at first, since most of the degree was composed of at least like 80% of programming. Even if you were to end up as a UX and where to study. So finding out beforehand what types of jobs are available in the tech industry can be really beneficial in choosing your career path. And even if you were to have programming as part of your degree and don't like it, because most of the time it's pretty difficult and it's a mindset change. It's like learning a new language. It's easy to kind of get stuck in that particular problem and to focus on that and make that as your whole degree. But understanding that it's just a stepping stone into the tech world helps tremendously with keeping up your motivation and especially when things get difficult. It's almost like having math at school and you ask yourself, where I'm going to use it, but just understanding that it's just part of it makes it a lot easier. So something I wish I knew when I started working was to move on quicker and to know exactly what I wanted. So like I mentioned, the first company I worked for was very corporate and stuck in their old way of thinking. And you all have that family member that will change their mind about something, at a braai where you're discussing, you just don't get into that conversation. So that goes for the workplace too. And in fact, there are usually a lot of them. So there will be companies that aren't inclusive and will not change their way of thinking or doing. But luckily in today's world, as a woman, we have a choice and you should use it. Don't spend your energy and beating yourself up on trying to change the viewpoint of another student, a colleague, or a manager. My advice would be to find a group of students or a company that matches your values. Even if it is as small as wanting to dress in a particular way or something bigger like not getting a promotion because of your gender, rather just move on. In the end, those companies or groups will fall behind for not keeping up with the rest of the world. People want change and inclusiveness, so seek that out. And then the fourth one is going back to basics. So when I worked amongst a large group of men, or even as part of like a group assignment when I studied and I was the only girl, I wasn't really confident at all. And most of the time too scared to ask for help. So starting out at university, this was especially a problem since I didn't know any programming basics. I relied on my class notes and my textbooks. And especially in today's tech industry with constant changes and updates, it's easy to get overloaded and overwhelmed. There's a new language or a framework or a technology coming out daily, and it's kind of hard to keep up. So as a tip, I would suggest to take advantage of all the courses and resources you can get specifically to ace the basics. So that is what sets apart a good employee from a great employee, is that difference about having a good foundation. It's only in my later years of study that Coursera came out, which is like the bigger older brother of Udemy. And that helped me tremendously with my computer science modules. So kind of like an insider tip, there's a few courses from the Princeton University that definitely helps a lot that I would recommend. So if you are too shy to ask for help or still working on winning those male friends or colleagues, I would definitely recommend use online resources or becoming a part of an online community that you can ask help for. So getting the basics right is going to help you with proving your competence as a woman. All right, so this brings me to my last point. There isn't a better time to start learning or working within the tech industry. This is a given, and you've probably heard it before because it's true. But you're probably thinking, this is what I'm trying to do with studying. So there are endless opportunities and abundance of work. And I know like a lot of people try to get overseas, and specifically now in the tech industry to UK or the Netherlands, but there's still a lot of opportunities in South Africa, particularly because there aren't a lot of qualified women in technology. But that said, it's not an easy path, and probably sometimes even a lonely path as a woman, and you don't always have support. However, like I mentioned, the tech industry is improving and making active steps towards including women. With talk like these and active communities, there is definitely hope. There's also a lot more interesting roles and different types of career paths that can be followed in tech. Just an interesting side story, my sister studied English and she ended up working in the tech industry as a system analyst. And back in the days, that wasn't even a thing. So that's a good note. So we should just keep on inspiring each other and also be kind towards each other's journey of learning. In the end, it's up to us to set a standard for ourselves as women in tech. And in my case, if you still don't find a company where you fit in, then just create your own.
Thank you so much. That was really, really interesting. I have a couple of questions, but yeah, I'll just jump in, and anyone else of the other two people who are here would want to ask a question, go for it. Can you share a little bit about, you mentioned interesting roles that like we're not stuck with the conventional roles in the tech industry anymore. Can you mention a little bit more detail about that?
No, definitely. So when I started out, front end, or particularly multimedia, was everything. We were the UI designers, the UX testers, even like creating or speccing out the actual project and then coding it as well. And that has completely split up to different roles. You get like a proper project manager, but which is related to technology. And then you get your UX designers, and your graphic designers is also a different industry. And then your UI designers, which is like Figma and XD. And you get things like your actual project management, where you have people that does the whole agile thing. So you can even become like a scrum master, or an agile guru. And then obviously it goes to the front end and then to the back end as well. That's a world I do not know much of, but I know that kind of split as well. You get like your system specialists and your DevOps, which is also a term that kind of grew out, and then your hardcore back engineers.
Yeah, so it sounds like what you're saying is, well, specifically with a multimedia degree, but even with a computer science or anything else related degree, there's a lot more than just become a programmer. It's a lot more nuanced than that. And actually you have a lot more choice with regards to what you enjoy and what you get to like forge a path into, is what it sounds like.
Yeah, definitely.
Can you share a little bit about like what it's been like running your own company? Like how does it feel? I mean, you're technically the CEO, right? But also the developer, but also the accountant. Like how do you manage that?
Yeah, I think actually the biggest hurdle is the accounting, especially. It's just it's not really accounting, more like financial basics and understanding. I think that holds back a lot of people, and more the admin side of it. Because once you have the skill and once you start the company, you can kind of learn the management, but understanding the financial business world is kind of the hardest part. But yeah, I kind of get that a lot. Like, how is it, and how did you do it, and which kind of feels strange, because that was kind of the easiest part. In the business world, I'm definitely not even featuring, so that's a whole new ball game. So I'm actually a junior again, just in that space.
Yo, it sounds like so much to manage. I was also wondering that image you showed at the beginning with the guy helping the girl up. Can you show it again, and then share your interpretation of how you see that? Because you mentioned that's what describes the way you finished your degree, right?
Yes. Well, that was kind of like the journey. Just say if it shows again.
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I just thought it was perfect because firstly, I saw the man was on the top. They always make it look easy, especially when they studied. And it's kind of as if he's trying to help her, but he's not really. So he's just like holding out her hand. And for some reason, it feels like we're not getting anywhere. She's not going to get up with that grip. So that was definitely an uphill battle personally. And I just laughed when I saw this picture, because I just could think of all the girls in my degree kind of struggling and having these male friends, but they're not really helping. They're just kind of posing, you could guess. Yeah.
Wow, there's so much insight into that. Actually, wow. At first saw that, I was like, oh, it's just a guy helping someone up the mountain. But I see what you're saying. That all makes a lot of sense. I was also thinking like it could look like she's trying to pull him down in some weird way, but let's not go into that. I really agree with that. I think I had a similar experience when I was studying. You have a lot of guy friends because that's how it's just the demographic, and it does feel like they're just further along just because of who they are, and maybe guys just tend to have more confidence in not knowing. They're more okay with not knowing, and they don't show it as well as much as we do, and so from the outside it looks like they have it all together. I think if you were to speak to lots of them, and my experience has been dealing with students a lot, has been that that's actually not the case. Most people don't feel like they have it together, and most people don't feel very confident, but it's definitely something that guys are better at projecting, I think. And it's good to realize, because firstly it helps us see the reality of the situation, and also be a little bit more kind towards them, because they're probably also struggling, but also just to be kinder towards ourselves and be like, it's okay, we're actually all struggling. Some of us just show it a little bit differently. Hava, I don't know how to pronounce your name. I don't know if you maybe want to, I see you're writing in the chat. You said you struggle with just moving. Maybe you want to explain that a little bit better? I don't know. Well, okay, I see. I feel we have to have all the pieces together before even starting, and that wastes time. Yeah, I think also it's this idea of projecting. I don't know why we think this, but when we're studying, but that we have to already know everything or show that we're in control of the situation, when actually the whole point of studying is the fact that you're saying, I don't know this thing and I want to know this thing, and I'm going to spend 3 years mastering this thing, or maybe 5 years, or however long. So yeah, it's funny when you stop to think about it, and you stop to think the ideas you put on yourself, and the expectations you have of yourself to have it all together, when actually no one else expects you to have it all together. The point is that everyone's learning. But yeah, I don't know if Mariaan, you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I think kind of like touching to what you said, to be forgiving to the guys too. So that's one of the reasons I recommend making friends with the guys. Even if the ratio of girls goes up in class, it's really beneficial, because I did tend to find a lot of my guy friends didn't always know how to interact with the girls in class, because there aren't really much, and some of them went to all guys schools, or all boys schools, so they weren't really used to women, and they were quite awkward. And in the end, they are like awkward IT guys, a bunch of nerds. So it actually helps from our side as well to communicate with them, and show them, we are also just human, and when you reach out your arm, you can actually firmly grip and help. You don't have to be this fragile, with me. And then touching on to the comments as well. Something I really found when I studied, which was interesting, is most of the guy friends that studied with me either had an older brother or a nephew or a father or uncle that was actually already in IT. And just having that vocabulary of knowing, what's a variable or what's a function or method, just kind of starting out, I think kind of gave them an edge. And most of us, I think, would be like the first generation. If you're lucky, maybe the second, but that's actually working on IT. So I think that's why we have that misconception of when you're starting that you don't know anything. Most of them kind of have a bit of the foundation.
Very true. I actually never even thought about that, but it's a lot more likely for a guy to have another guy in his life who's been in IT. A girl might have a father who's in IT, but for guys to have friends and that sort of thing, it's more likely. So I guess they feel more comfortable with it already. And I guess also the stigma of just women in front of a computer is different to a stigma of a guy in front of a computer. And we're still breaking that down. And there's female gamers now, and we're getting there. But it's not quite the same just yet, I think. I had one more question for you, and that was about your student loan. Can you share a little bit about, you said it was something you'd still recommend doing, but it sounds like it was quite a difficult experience. Maybe you can share a little bit about that.
Yeah, definitely. So I think it was just difficult because nobody has ever done that, or people just don't speak about it, because I don't think it's something that people really own up to, especially if people with their own cars drive on campus and you're like kind of struggling. So I think it was difficult in that aspect, just trying to find out, what is available and what is actually out there. And yeah, we kind of found out, my mother and myself kind of did the research that APSA has like this cool connection with University of Pretoria, and they give out student loans. And it's actually not that hard. So there's also different terms and conditions that you can choose. And I don't think there was any interest, or very, very low interest. So they were quite helpful. At that time, there was a particular student branch as well from APSA that you could visit. And took out the loan. It was very easy. The terms was just that you basically need to finish your degree. And the moment you start working, like getting your first paycheck, okay, then you can like start, paying back. So during your studies, you don't have to worry about it, which was awesome and very helpful. And then because of the abundance of work in tech, I immediately found a job and was able to pay that back. So I would definitely recommend it. And the reason I'm mentioning it, I have spoken to a few people where they just stopped completely and said they ran out of funding or couldn't afford it. So I would actually recommend just take that few extra years, invest in yourself, because you can't go wrong with working in tech. So rather just get that loan.
Yeah, that's so true. You're right. There's a lot of jobs, and even if you don't necessarily get the job you want straight away, you'll get something that will help you pay off the loan. And at the end of the day, you have a degree, which is really going to help you so much more than having stepped back. So you're taking on that extra difficulty, that extra financial strain. But like you say, I mean, this sounds really great. I like low interest, and it just sounds quite flexible and helpful. Like they really are trying to help.
Yes.
Because loans can
But they
sometimes
want
be a
you to
little
pay
bit
back
scary.
when you start like earning
Yeah.
though. So it's an
Yeah.
investment from their side. But
Yes.
I mean, it's good. It's good in the long run. So
Yeah.
I definitely recommend it.
Sure. Yeah. No, it's really interesting hearing that perspective, because I don't know much about that. So that's really cool. I don't know if, yes, Hava, go for it. Sorry, I don't know how to pronounce your name. Maybe you can tell us.
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's pronounced Hawa.
Okay, Hawa.
Yes.
Cool, thanks.
I think no problem. One thing I really wanted to ask is okay, I think I'll just first describe where I am currently. So I'm studying computer science, information knowledge systems. So it's sort of a dual between computer science and whatever elective group you choose. So I've chosen genetics. And one thing I keep seeing whenever I hop onto Discord and the students talk to the lecturers, it's mostly among the males. They're always talking about how they've done this internship, that internship, and anytime I hear this, I always feel like I'm behind. I haven't really done much, and I guess it's worrying feeling. How much preparation is needed in order for you to enter the workplace? Is it all right for me to just take it slow and just focus on getting through the degree, or should I take up opportunities during the holidays? I mean, I know I should, but it's more like how can I put it? How important is it to take on challenges like that, and how prepared do you have to be? I think the anxiety comes with just being prepared. How long will I have to wait until I'm ready to actually take on these internships, just get some experience here and there? I don't know if I'm making sense or.
Go for it, Mariaan. I think you might have an answer.
Yeah, so that's definitely a fine line. So to kind of help you with that, the student job that I took on was not really related much to technology at first. I think my first job was at Mr. Video, which doesn't exist anymore, so that just makes me feel old. But it did help me to work with people, like very difficult people. And then later on, I did take a few like summer jobs with like tech companies. But that was like WordPress stuff as well. But at least that kind of gets you into a space where you start learning the vocabulary of people in the workplace and within technology as well. So that's something I would definitely recommend. But it is a very personal thing. So definitely take your own pace. So it goes back to the basics I said about mastering that first. Because in the end, if you're going to come into the workplace and you feel there's gaps, then it's going to kind of be exponential to try and catch up, rather get your foundation, even if it takes longer and you are maybe a slow learner, or it takes you longer to grasp new concepts. Just take your own pace, don't feel pressured. That's probably one of the biggest tips I can give, is not to compare yourself. Because if I were to compare myself with somebody that studied with me, I'd probably not do what I do now. So stop comparing. That's the first thing I would say. And if you feel you need some experience, it doesn't necessarily have to be in tech. Just maybe start working, but take it slow. You'll eventually get there. Hope that helps. Anik, anything from your side?
Well, I guess my experience is slightly less relevant because I'm still in academia, but from the podcast interviews I've had for the Multimedia podcast, and just people I've spoken to, vacation work is very helpful for building relationships and having companies learn who you are. There's a couple of companies, for example, GenDAC, that hire multimedia students, probably also computer science students. and they offer vacation work, which is quite helpful because it's obviously in January, February when you're not at the university, or in July. And what's great there is that you're building relationships, and the chances of you getting offered a job after that after your final year are a little bit more likely, because they've seen you work in a team and they've seen the quality of what you do. That being said, not everyone does it, and like Mariaan said, the tech industry is booming. So I wouldn't necessarily, I understand that it can be really overwhelming seeing a lot of people talking about all their internships and feeling like, oh my goodness, I'm not doing this, I'm never going to get a job. But like what Mariaan says, I think the basics are almost as important, or even the same amount, as in when you walk into a company and they give you a little coding test to see, how well can you do these things. If you've spent your time on your computer science modules and you've mastered those concepts and chose not to do VAC work, that's going to stand you in as good stead as having had those, relationships built beforehand. So I guess I would say there's benefits to both, and I wouldn't feel too worried. Like what Mariaan's saying, like it's better to go at your own pace and to master the stuff well, because I think ultimately you don't just want the piece of paper that's your degree, you actually want the skills that come with it, and so spending time to master those is very important. I think we're basically at the end. I'm really glad we recorded this because I'm thinking it's going to help a lot of people. Mariaan, I just want to say thank you so much for joining us tonight. Thank you for preparing. Thank you for your really valuable insights into industry and being a woman in industry and studying as a woman, and just the tech industry. It's been really helpful to hear. I'd love to have you on the Multimedia podcast. I will email you to arrange if you'd be keen, because I think your insights would be very helpful there as well. But thank you for your time, and we really appreciate it.
Thank you for you as well. Just a bit of a boasting to Annick's side. She's been a really great lecturer and inspiration as well. So thank you, Annick. I appreciate it.
Oh gosh,
I think the reflection on my screen makes me quite blue.
Oh, don't worry. It's nighttime. It's how it goes on Zoom.
Yeah, but I'm definitely interested in hearing the podcasts, and thank you from your side. I think these tech talks really help inspire women and just form a bit of community. I think there's definitely lacking on the UP side for this, and in South Africa too. So thank you, Annick. It's a great initiative.
Great, thank you so much. So have a good evening, everyone. And I'll put this up on YouTube and send out the link.
Cool. Thank you. Bye, guys.
Bye.